It's my great pleasure now to kick off the next session, and I've got to pause. I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I do that, we spontaneously put into Pigeonhole in the final item of the day an opportunity for all of you to put in your thoughts about what you've heard today. So in the spirit of the last conversation, if you don't have a target or a quota, you don't get there. We want to look for at least 20 thoughts from you in the audience around something you heard today that you think is really interesting that we need to keep talking about, something you think we need to do more work on, something you think that our membership base, which is across business, government, academia and the community sector, what can we do with our membership to actually progress some of the important issues that were talked about. And I'm going to own up to being the person who put the question in to Gabrielle Traynor saying, man, this all sounds so simple. Why are we not making progress? So one of the things that you're going to hear a lot more from CEDA about from now on is how we actually make progress on things. So we're not having these conversations for the sake of having conversations and ticking that off and saying, feel really great about it. We actually really want to start driving serious policy change, better collaboration and better outcomes. So go to the last item and start peppering that with your thoughts. You won't get drinks unless there's 20 in there. Now, it is now my great pleasure to invite to the stage Damon Hall, who's the Executive Director of the Olympic and Paralympic Infrastructure Office, who's going to talk to us about what's going on in Brisbane, what we should be excited about, and you can ask him some questions about that. He's going to come up, give you a quick rundown, and then we'll be in the hot seat for some Q&A. Thank you. Damon.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, CEDA. Thank you, Melinda, for the invitation to speak to industry and policymakers on the 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games. In 3,024 days, the opening ceremony will kick off and Brisbane will be broadcast to over 200 countries. That's just over 8 years away, which in some perspectives can be seen as a long time, such as for those New South Wales Rugby League supporters in that period of 2006 to 2013. Oh, sorry about that. Off script a little bit. But as we all know, in the infrastructure sector, 8 years is not a long time. And with the Olympics, with a fixed date, time is the one commodity that we can't get back. But what this 8-year period does provide is an opportunity to realise the social and economic benefits a lot sooner. These are estimated by KPMG as $3.5 billion in social benefits in Queensland and $9.1 billion nationally, $4.6 billion in induced tourism and trade, and $8.5 billion nationally. So the Olympic runway is giving Brisbane, Queensland and Australia the best possible advertising for tourism and trade investment. And also, the world's biggest event will inspire future generations to get involved in community sport and active lifestyles, which we all know is so important in today's age. The International Olympic Committee put forward some new norm reforms in 2018, which is all part of their 2020 +5 agenda. And this provides cities with increased flexibility in designing games to meet long-term development goals and seek cost efficiencies without compromising the Olympics experience. This provides opportunities to reduce venue sizes and optimise existing infrastructure, which really did enable Brisbane, South East Queensland and the state to bid for the 32 games. So what this means in relation to our plans for the 2032 games is that we're predominantly using existing venue infrastructure. And this also helps distribute the social and economic benefits that I talked about throughout Queensland. In Brisbane, clearly with a number of venues and indeed villages. The Gold Coast, where we also have a village proposed at Robina. On the Sunshine Coast, where there's also a satellite village proposed at Kawana. Up in Townsville and also in Cairns. And of course, we can make use of existing football stadiums here in Sydney at Allianz Stadium and in Melbourne at Amy Park. So in terms of the new venues, there are 7 that are proposed to be developed. There's a new whitewater centre in Redland, which will host canoe sprint, but in a legacy sense will provide a great eco-tourism opportunity in that region, and also opportunities for swift water rescue training. A new Brisbane arena within the city precinct, which will really enliven and activate the area around Roma Street, and 5 indoor sports centres across southeast Queensland, in the Sunshine Coast, in Moreton Bay, in Logan, and also 2 in Brisbane. Having an intergovernmental agreement between the Commonwealth and the Queensland governments, and now progressed business cases and project validation activities, we're expecting the majority of those venues to progress to procurement in 2024. You've no doubt seen some coverage recently of a review of the sports venues, which was led by former Lord Mayor Graham Quirk and supported by Ken Konofsky and Michelle Morris. This provided an opportunity to ensure the venue investments deliver the best legacy outcomes for the community for decades to come. The independent panel made 30 recommendations, of which the government accepted 27. The 3 recommendations the government didn't accept were to build a new stadium at Victoria Park for cricket and AFL, to demolish the Gabba after 2032, and to not develop the Queensland Sport and Athletic Centre, which was built to host the 1982 Commonwealth Games. The Queensland Government does not believe it would be possible to build a new stadium at Victoria Park within the existing agreed funding for venues, and a new stadium would be outside the IOC's new norm that I mentioned of using existing or already planned venues. The Queensland Government's committed to establishing a Games Delivery Authority and to have this up and operational in 2024. So well timed for the expected procurement and delivery activities commencing and engagement with the market. I will mention the indoor sports centres because I reflected that there are 5 of those. They really are great community assets and really do build on the legacy that we've seen from the 2018 Commonwealth Games. There were 2 community indoor sports centres built for those games, one at Carrara and another at Coomera. They provide 9 to 12 courts, which can be used for basketball, futsal, netball, other indoor sports. And for the time of the games, are then overlaid with temporary seating to be able to host the nature of indoor sports that you see for these events. And for those of my age and vintage, certainly the 1980s and 90s, and Michael Jordan was a great era for basketball, and we've seen a real surge in basketball again recently. You only have to look at Tasmania and the Jack Jumpers. So there's an absolute demand for indoor sports courts within southeast Queensland and also, of course, across the country. So this is a really great opportunity to provide those legacy venues. So again, thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I look forward to collaborating with the sector over the next 8 years as we deliver these venues and really do realise these legacy outcomes for Queensland and the country. Thank you.
Thanks, Damon. That was a very short and succinct presentation, but I think landed on what the key points are for the audience. I thought I'd start with just a fairly broad question, if you like, and I think one of the interesting things that we've seen in the media, in particular around the Olympics, Paralympics, but also obviously the Commonwealth Games, is a really different kind of attitude towards what the benefits of these of hosting these events is. And early on today we were talking, and I mentioned an anecdote from a conversation I had with a former Victorian Premier who was actually talking about the benefits that continue to be delivered to Victoria and Melbourne in particular from having hosted the Olympic Games, because of the substantive investment in this critical sports infrastructure that continues to define the vibrancy and the prosperity of Melbourne, and around which Melbourne has built itself as a sporting capital. And so I'm just interested in your thoughts on, how you're thinking about the return on investment from the Brisbane Olympics and Paralympics broadly, and what you see the potential for benefits to the community and to business, not just in the year of the Olympics, but beyond.
No, absolutely. I reflected on the 2018 Commonwealth Games and also in the remarks also at the 1982 Commonwealth Games. And what we're seeing here is the ability to continue to use those venues in relation to the Olympics in 2032. So those investments at that time absolutely have long-running benefits to the community. So it means that we don't have to build new facilities such as velodromes, a suite of indoor sports halls on the Gold Coast and the like. We've got those sporting precincts in place. But what the 2032 Games does provide is an opportunity to bring forward investments, so really build community assets in time for the Games, but not necessarily just for the Games. So that's why we're looking at those community-based assets that I referred to. I think one of the big differences between whether it be Melbourne in 56 and the sports park around the MCG, or indeed Sydney in 2000 at Homebush, is that the Brisbane Games really do draw on those new norms and the ability to host it across the region. So whilst there will still be a precinct at Chandler to host various events and precincts within the Sunshine Coast, we really do see a distributed model really playing well in the Queensland context. However, what's important there is to make sure there's good integration to transport and well-connected precincts that can really revitalise parts of the city. And so the Brisbane Arena is a signature project that will enable us to do that. The Brisbane Arena, for those who are from Queensland, would effectively provide an additional indoor entertainment venue, which currently we have one at Boondall, which is a little bit distant from the city. So a precinct in and around Roma Street, which is the busiest public transport node within Brisbane, has bus metro, suburban trains and indeed Cross River Rail, will really enable a revitalisation of that precinct and connections back into the city and through into South Bank. So really those legacy opportunities are there and can be harnessed, absolutely. What's different is we don't have, for example, a large former industrial park at Homebush or for Sydney Games or indeed East London for the 2012 Games. Our venue strategy is quite different, really drawing upon that new norm and embedding these assets for the community. Our role has been described similar to the London Delivery Authority in 2012. We're building the stage for the Olympics and then the organising committee will come on and actually put on the show. So those stages are what we're looking at in terms of assets that will serve the community well, both in advance and for 20 years or more.
Yeah. I've got a question in here from Braith Gilchrist, which picks up a theme that was talked about a lot earlier in our conference today, which is really around delivery and achievement of delivery timelines and schedules against the backdrop of a long history of mega projects that failed to do that. And you talked about the new delivery authority. I wondered if you could say a little bit more about how you see that working, what sort of leadership and skills you're looking to attract to that and how that's going to get you the outcomes you need.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of that's still to be formed. The Queensland Government's announced that they would like to have that delivery authority up and running in the middle of this year. I think drawing upon experiences from Sydney Coordination Office in 2000, but also the London Delivery Authority that was established for the 2012 Games. I think there are some good lessons to be learnt there. Certainly, delivery of these venues, as you say, skill shortages that were touched on today, time is certainly of the essence. Bringing those capabilities together will be important, and really having a strong focus on delivering this program. That's not to say that stakeholder engagement, all of the various procurement outcomes that we've reflected on are absolutely still going to be important in that delivery authority. But I think having a board, a CEO, and a really strong focus on delivery will be an important other lens in ensuring we can deliver. In terms of skills, I think the new norm helps us there. If we had a very large precinct, villages, a whole suite of new venues and temporary venues, then that skills challenge would be even heightened. But with the type of venues that we're looking at, which are those 5 new community sports centres, upgrades to other venues and a whitewater centre, we think we can manage. And for context, our venues program in total is $7.1 billion. A large component of that is the Brisbane Arena that I mentioned at $2.5 billion of Commonwealth funding. That $7.1 billion is in the context of a $90 billion big build program within Queensland, and much larger than that as we've seen today in relation to other projects. So it's large, but it's not overwhelming in terms of the overall infrastructure spend. What we're also doing is working closely with Construction Skills Queensland to model out the skills and capabilities that might be required, just to ensure that we don't have any gaps. And the final point I'd mention is that the London experience looked at a delivery partner type approach across the program. So whilst we do have these 7 new projects and a suite of upgrades, really managing that at a program level, looking at supply chain, looking at efficiencies in the way in which we manage those procurements is another thing that we continue to reflect on, and will do so through the Delivery Authority.
I'd love to have a longer conversation with you around the decarbonisation objectives and how that's going to work, but that's probably going to take longer than we've got. So let me finish on one question, which I think is important for our audience, which is, obviously you're going to be looking to work and engage really closely with business, very important role in helping you achieve the delivery of the Olympic and Paralympic Games. So I guess final word from you and to the audience in particular around what you're looking for and how you're looking to engage with business.
Absolutely. I will touch on the sustainability because we have 3, I can't help myself up here. We have 3 real strong pillars. One is sustainability, the other is accessibility, inclusion, and third is First Nations engagement. And that's really strongly through not only our own procurement approaches, but also the Federation funding agreements with the Commonwealth. In relation to sustainability, just very quickly, 6-star, Green Star are the targets for us for all of our vertical new and upgraded infrastructure that I've mentioned. But in relation to the engagement from the market, I'll touch briefly on that. Firstly, appreciate those outcomes that we're after. Clearly, we're after the legacy outcomes of these great facilities for the community, but we are really after those procurement objectives and really seeing the benefits realised from the investment. And then secondly, stay close to the pipeline. I've mentioned and taken the opportunity, and thank you again for the opportunity to mention the pipeline. Stay close, make sure you're all pre-qualified for those in the market, and look out pretty soon for some procurement activities. We're very keen to ensure, picking up from earlier today, collaborative contracting is certainly a principle that we will look to adopt on our program of works. And for those in Queensland, we've developed those procurement strategies based on some clear market sounding and engagement activities. So the types of managing contractor, collaborative approaches, early contractor involvement, those are the sorts of flexibilities and principles that we'll look to embed in the program. So yeah, really looking forward to working with you over coming years.
Great. Well, the risk of stretching the pun, I'm going to give that a gold medal, sort of personal best for amount of content delivered in 20 minutes or less. Can you please join me in thanking Damon?
Thank you.